co-founder of Live Energy. And I'm bringing you the Curveball Architecture podcast for when life doesn't go to plan. And this is part of our lockdown series. And today I'm with Ricky Warren, Biomechanics Specialist, and Guinness World Record holder. And we're going to be talking about all things food, anxiety, and movement related, so you can better handle this isolationary period and take some knowledge gems with you into the real world when we go back to normal, which hopefully is soon. And at the end, I'm going to be asking Ricky what the biggest curveball he's experienced in his life and how that shaped him. Let's get started. So Ricky, thank you so much for your time today, and that we get to speak to each other because it's nice to socialize even if it's digital. You basically come back from traveling all around the world, and now we're in lockdown. Like, how were you dealing with that? That is a huge contrast.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I wasn't ready to come home. I was a bit gutted because I was ready to move on to the next. I was in Bali, the last place, and I was ready to move on to the next place, where they started shutting all the airports and the borders. And obviously, when this got a bit more serious and everyone started locking down, I had a choice. Do I stay in Bali? Because they were offering emergency visas to anyone who couldn't get home, because all these flights were getting cancelled. So many people were trying to leave and flights were just getting cancelled. They were dropping like flies. So I thought, should I stay in paradise and be locked down, or shall I go home and be locked down? But the difference is, in a foreign government, you don't really know what they're going to do and what kind of powers they have and how they might treat non-nationals.
Yeah, that's true.
And apparently now, because I've been keeping in touch with a lot of my friends who were stuck there a bit longer, but just about managed to get out now, they've started closing beaches and basically, before they could just move around freely and go surfing and do stuff like that, but now they're really locking it down as well. And it's not really going to be a good situation to be stuck in a hotel or hostel or villa in a foreign country when you can't even read the language when they deliver government letters. And I made the decision to come back, but it's okay. I can always go back out there when this stuff calms down a bit. And I had a good run. I was out for 3 months. I went to India, Sri Lanka and Bali, and I've been to those places before, so it's all good.
Yeah, I saw your brilliant videos in Rishikesh. It made me miss it so much. That bridge.
Yeah, that place has a special place in people's hearts, doesn't it, once they go there?
It really is. It's magical. India is such a crazy place. I don't think anywhere in the world compares to India at all. So how are you managing at home though? Is your routine very different to how it would be normally?
There's a meme. I think it's called Monkey Puppet, and there's a face, and he's like looking like this, and then he's like this on the second one. You know what I mean? It's like a monkey face.
I've seen that one. Yeah.
And at the top it says, when you realise that your normal daily routine is called quarantine.
That's how I feel. Apart from the gym and seeing my friends, it's pretty much the same. There's no difference.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So to be honest, because I run my own business and I have my own routine and my own things, obviously I'm social when I see my friends when I can and stuff. And that's the only thing that's changed really. But in terms of me waking up, my regular routine, going to training, whatever else, I'm doing the same thing. And there's just a bit more extra time than normal. I think one of the main things is I have a little less FOMO than normal, because I know everybody else is at home. so I'm like, I'm not even missing out on anything.
Yeah, it's actually more relaxing because you can just get on with things at home and focus on them and not be thinking like, oh, there are all these other things that I could be doing. Even if you weren't ever intending on doing them, at least that there's less noise.
Yes. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, definitely. And do you have a strict morning routine at all?
Not strict. I think there's been phases of my life where I've been strict with my routine or with certain things that I do, but that's because I had goals around those. So if I, for instance, promised myself that I get better at meditating and I would wake up at a certain time every day and practice, at this point, I don't feel the need to have to discipline myself like that. So I'm being more gentle with myself. And I think at the moment, it's probably important for people to do that, because you shouldn't be really harsh on yourself at a time like this. It's time to be forgiving and gentle on yourself. And if you're getting a bit fat or whatever, don't get paranoid. You can get rid of it, the main thing right now, I think, is taking care of this, like mental health. And your physical health, you can do what you can with the things that you've got available to you or the opportunities you have. But, you know, if you're stuck indoors and you don't have anywhere to work out and this and that, I mean, there's stuff you can do in your house, but if you don't have access to a squat rack and you can't work your legs, then you can't. You have to just let that part of your life sacrifice for now and keep your mental health well by being gentle on yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel that strong sense of like acceptance. So it's like,
Yeah.
just accept that we can't do the normal things that we would do.
Yeah.
And we just have to adapt. And it's so yin.
Yeah.
It's like the world, which are always like in this yang, high, like push, push, push energy. And the virus has forced us to be more yin. If you were trying to like hit those goals and push and be disciplined. And I think, I know for a lot of my friends, they're super anxious right now about getting the virus or spreading the virus or becoming really ill. How do you think people can best go about avoiding anxiety and then maintaining their mental health?
Most people on a day-to-day basis, they fill their lives with distraction. So you wake up, you go on autopilot, you go to work, you do your bits and bobs, you come home, you see your friends, you cook, and right up until the moment they sleep, they're distracting themselves from the voice inside. Then suddenly you're not allowed out. And a lot of people can't deal with that because they're sitting at home and they have to confront these deeper voices and these traumas or these thoughts that are coming out. And they haven't spent necessarily the time to sit there and think about them because they purposefully avoid them during their daily life. So if you've not done that work to sit with yourself and come to terms with, what am I actually doing with my life and what is my purpose and am I actually truly happy with where I am, and, you know, am I achieving my goals or whatever it is? If you're forced to confront that because you're in quarantine, that can be a nightmare for some people, you know. But for other people who have done some of that work, or maybe you live alone, or maybe you do a lot of meditation, it's not that hard because you're used to it. You've already confronted those demons of yours or
Exactly.
those
You're not
traumas.
just
So
avoiding the feelings inside all the time, which is what
that's
social
it.
media is, and what eating is a lot of the time as well. It's like, oh, I don't like how I feel, so I'm going to cover it up and numb it with either socialized
Yeah.
eating, smoking, being
Yes.
on my phone, looking at Instagram, whatever.
This might look like a curse, and in some ways it is in different ways, but really overall, there is a big blessing in this, that people dismiss meditation, people dismiss yoga, they dismiss a lot of different things like this. But the fact is, if you're sitting there right now and you're in anxiety or you're nervous or you're in turmoil, this is a big wake-up call that you have to learn how to sit with yourself and how to be content with yourself, how to produce self-love and not have to need other people to feel good about yourself. It's a big wake-up call to people who have been distracting themselves. And there's a yogi or yogini, I should say, online called Hanan Nelazar. And she's really, really talented with her practice. She put a little status on one of her pictures recently, and I loved it. I saved it. She said, "You have all the tools, you're just distracted."
It's so true. So true.
So whatever it is, whether it's reducing anxiety, whether it's creating focus, whether it's finding motivation to do something, whether it's finding the discipline to practice and get good enough at something you want to practice, you have all the tools already within you. You're just distracted. And that is the whole message of yoga, or the yogic philosophy and the way of life that encourages, is to use what you have within yourself. You don't need anything else, just yourself. You can create balance, prosperity, happiness, ease of the body. All of these things can come from just this thing that we have here.
Yeah,
So,
all the answers are inside, like we always know. And it brings me my book, my notebook cover. Literally, I don't know if you can read it. Can you see what it says?
No, I can see the mandala there. That's nice.
Yeah,
What does
it
it say?
says, quiet the mind and the soul will speak. And that's so much about what's going on right now. It really resonates. It is like, yeah, when you just shut the mind up, then the truth is there and it sits there and it comes out. But you can't hear it otherwise because we're so busy with all the chatter and the distractions and the can't do this, this isn't good enough, etc. Blah blah blah. It's all like poof, up there, but we've got everything right here. because I also practice a bit of meditation, my own discipline, but you get into a flow of doing it, and I like doing yoga in the morning. For people who've never done it before, so they've never done any breathing exercises or any meditation or yoga, what do you think they could do with in just a few minutes that might alleviate some of their stress, worry, and anxiety?
It sounds a bit basic, but it really is as simple as breathing. So if they just look up some breathing techniques, if you look really deeply into what breathing is, it carries your life force. If you don't breathe, you die, right?
Yeah.
And when you do breathe, if you breathe vigorously, suddenly you feel very alive. And if you breathe in different ways, you can feel concentration, you can feel calm. So breathing is actually one of the only autonomic functions of the body. Like the heartbeat, it happens by itself. Digestion, it happens by itself. Temperature regulation, it happens by itself. These things are all autonomic functions of the body.
Yeah.
Breathing also happens by itself, but it's not always autonomic. You can manually override it, but you can't manually override your heartbeat or your digestion or your temperature. You can through the breathing as a third-party medium. So the breathing has the ability to impact the autonomic functions and the autonomic nervous system. So you can actually manipulate your own nervous system or your breathing or your temperature, your digestion, just by manipulating your breathing. And because you can manually breathe in different methods, that's a great way to learn how to control things that you can't with your mind. So breathing is really important. And just by taking deep, slow breaths, I know it's so cliche, but it's not about taking 10 deep breaths. It's about how you breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about the timing and the pace and what you're imagining while you're doing it, the conscious breathing, not just subconscious breathing. If people look up pranayama, which is breathing methods of yoga, or one of them, and there's a couple of others, including Ujjayi breath and warrior breath and Kapalbhati, which is like heating breath. There's all these different types of breath. If they just look them up on YouTube, somebody will guide you through it.
Yeah, and I think
But it's really
for
helpful.
relaxing, isn't the principle for relaxing mainly to make sure the exhalation is longer than the inhalation? So if you
Yeah, because inhalation stimulates all your systems.
Mm-hmm.
It wakes you up. And holding your breath is where you can create concentration. And breathing out is release. It's releasing stress, trauma, thoughts, anything.
Mm-hmm.
You're just letting go. And if you keep breathing out and you don't breathe in again, you die. So that's the whole point, is like that is completely letting go of this thing. But when you breathe in, you're holding on to it.
Yeah.
So it's that cycle within us of holding on and letting go,
Yeah.
which is the balance of life, isn't it?
Absolutely. So if everyone watching this right now just takes a 4-second inhalation in, and hold it for 7, and exhale for 8.
What made you choose those numbers?
I found a breathing exercise a while ago that had those. And I tried lots of them, like the box breathing, where it's like 4 in, 4 hold, and I don't really like that one. And that one, 4, 7, no, it just that the 4, 7, 8, it just sits well with me. And that is the one I practice it when I'm in the sauna, and like time just flies by, and it just settles my mind. And I think it's focusing on the time and just really blowing out the exhalation on the end is really soothing if I'm feeling stressed out, and I remember to do it, because it's always in the times of most need that you forget all the tools that you have. Yeah. But that one in particular, those numbers, they work for me.
Whatever it is that you practice, you have to repeat it lots of times until it becomes habit or subconscious. That's also what meditation does, is gives you the ability to create focus in a time of stress. Because if you can always hold on to consciousness and conscious decisions, even during times of stress, then you're able to use all the tools available to you. But if you're reactive, it's not good.
Yeah, then otherwise you just get lost in the head spin, and there's no ground from which to stand. You can
also be manipulated quite easily, you know. There are people that find themselves getting angry a lot or getting upset a lot, or, you know, whatever it is, it's because somebody's managed to stir you around and you haven't been able to hold on to yourself strong enough. They've just swept you up, you know, or the situation swept you up. Just holding true to yourself and being able to focus, that it's worth a lot.
Yeah. And in this instance, so in particular with the pandemic, and it needs to worry about the pandemic, how would you say people can do that in terms of not being swept up in the fear?
When I was in Bali, it was really weird contrast that people didn't really care. Well, it's not that they didn't care. It wasn't being shoved down our throats that coronavirus is scary and infectious and it's going to kill loads of people. And there wasn't fear-based news going around. There was information being shared by people little bit by little bit, and probably too slowly. Indonesian government has probably acted very, very slowly, but then so has the British government. But the contrast I noticed when I got back was, as soon as I got back here, I felt fear in everyone. And I was like, what are you so scared about? Oh my God, this virus. And I was like, in my humble opinion, and people will probably argue with me about this till the sun comes down, but there's every few years, there is a super flu. I studied biology at university, so I feel like I know a little bit about this. Every year there's a flu, and it evolves and mutates in different ways. And every few years there's a super flu. And a lot of these other flus, like swine flu, bird flu, SARS, etc., they came from eating animals which had diseases or flu or virus themselves. And somehow the virus mutated and managed to survive in humans. And the thing is, nothing of this nature has happened before when those other diseases or flus have come. It's just now that everything's being shut down, this response to me feels a bit extra compared to how we've dealt with other things before. I've read something that there's these 4 health councils who categorize diseases as, there's something called HCID, highly contagious and infectious disease. And to be classified as that, it has to have a certain amount of stats behind the mortality and infection rate, etc. And they classified it as that before they even had much data on it. And now they have more data on it. They've downgraded it. And they've said it's no longer considered, these 4 health councils, it's no longer considered a highly contagious infectious disease because the mortality rate isn't high enough to consider it. And the infection rate is not that high either. It's just that if you do have it, there's a high chance of pneumonia. But apart from that, it doesn't look like Spanish flu or plague, which wiped out millions. Just to try and get closer to your question, don't read all the tabloids and all the stuff that Good Morning or whatever else is putting out about fear. Like, I turned on the radio station the other day when I was training, and all I heard was stay at home. And I was like, all right, give it a rest. I get it. I get the point now.
Yeah.
Like, stop trying to induce fear in me. I understand. And I think people should just stop listening to it. Yes, look, follow the government guidelines. I'm not going to go against that. Stay at home if that's what we're being told to do. Go outside and get your hour of exercise because you've been told you can. And keep your distance from people, but don't keep listening to them stirring about the fear. Like, it's not our job to stop a pandemic. That's their job. That's the government's job. Our job is to be responsible and to do our part. But we don't have to sit there and listen to fear about it.
And not just
we get on with what
I'm afraid. Exactly, because I don't actually normally watch the news at all. And I only started to a little bit because my sister kind of pulled me into it. And then I literally had no awareness of COVID-19 at all. And then she was like, look at these stats and everything. And it's still, even the death rate on what out of the people who they think are infected is exceptionally low. And then they know that most people who get it don't even show any symptoms.
Yeah.
So therefore, is it worse than a normal flu? Because it's only so far killing off people who would die of the flu otherwise anyway. Is that in my circle of control?
Yes.
What can I do to be healthier and to protect my family without encaging myself in a house and sitting there trembling with fear, getting sick from fear, because like if you're afraid of it, you're going to get ill. Like you'll get ill of something if you sit there in fear.
Yeah.
You manifest
Yeah.
that thought.
With us, I feel like we want to be able to help people. And one of the things I think people can help themselves with in terms of keeping themselves strong against viruses is to optimize the body. Like we met at the Health Optimization Summit, right? There's 3 things I think you need to do to keep the body strong and have a strong immune system to be able to combat this kind of thing. One is you need to charge the body. And when I say charge, we are bioelectromagnetic beings, and we need to keep our vibration strong. And one of the methods we can use to do that is breathing techniques, because it carries the life force through the body and it enhances the vibration of a person. We need to ground the body, because we're being bombarded by positive ions all the time from different frequencies and different wavelengths, from radio and Wi-Fi and TV and fear and whatever it is. And putting your feet, your bare feet on the ground, you can absorb negative ions from the earth, which will balance you out a bit and give you groundedness. So grounding the body, yoga also helps with that. And then cleansing the internal systems. Without going into this massive debate about meat, which I completely think is a natural phenomena to eat meat, because people in Alaska can't survive without eating fish. You can't grow agriculture. So I'm not talking about the ethics of eating meat here.
Yeah.
I'm talking about optimizing your body against disease. If you eat a plant diet without meat, you will have a more alkaline internal system. Your body will be less acidic. And the reason I mention that is because for disease to survive in your body, it needs 2 things mainly. It needs a source of food or fuel, it's like sugar, for example, and it needs a hospitable host environment. And alkaline is not friendly to disease. Viruses are a slightly different thing, because they don't eat or sleep. They just genetically clone themselves and go on and on and on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, your body can be more resistant to the effects of these things if it's strong in general. So I'm saying there are things you can do to optimize your body and to biohack it, or whatever you want to call it. And, you know, the only way we're going to stop this is by standing 6 meters apart and this and that. Well, what about the responsibility of us to ourselves to keep our bodies strong?
Exactly, to look after our health. And so basically breathe, move, get outside, avoid consuming too many toxins, and be more, I mean, I've always said, like, if you want to optimize your health, then just get closer to nature. And minimalism is the way. So we need to kind of simulate a natural environment in a not our natural world. So get out there, like you said, rather than adding to it, including the environmental ones like EMF. So yeah, we got to take responsibility for our own health and optimize our immune systems to the best of our ability, rather than wait for the government to come up with just a cure for this, because they'll come up with a cure for this one and there'll be another one next year or the year after, and it will be another cycle. But if we're strong and we fortify our immunities, then we'll be good.
The medicine for bird flu, you know, so there was a big panic about whether there'd be enough, but it passed, you know. And this too will pass, you know. I'm not saying we just sit there like lemmings, but I'm saying we don't have to be fearful.
Everything is temporary. That's the thing. It's all temporary, and we should just make the most of it in the time that we have. And then I think that's the biggest blessing, as we discussed earlier, is a nice time to be yin and creative. On back to food though, because I know that we briefly mentioned food, but I know that for a lot of people, they are snacking way more than usual. How do you, because I'm used to working from home, so, but if you're not, and you do just kind of want to eat or think about food all the time, how do you stop doing that?
That is an interesting question. I mean, I was asking myself that the other day. I find myself increasingly hungry, even though I'm not, well, I am actually, I'm still training and stuff, but not any more than I usually do, but I'm definitely eating more. The eating that people are doing is more compulsive eating. We shouldn't be under this misunderstanding that food is also a drug. Your body doesn't need it as much as you think it does. When you're in a state where you're anxious or you don't know what to do or you're bored, food can be an exciting activity for the body. It's stimulation for your senses.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're eating just to stimulate yourself because you're bored, that's not a healthy way of eating, because you don't need that. But if you're eating because you're hungry or because you need the sustenance for all the calories, that's different. And so it's a very hard one, because again, look, people are going to use food as a way to eat themselves out of depression or sadness or whatever.
Exactly, it's
But
just a temporary stimulation. You've just got to
yeah,
swap it for a different kind of stimulation.
at the same time, remember I did say we've got to be gentle with ourselves. To say to somebody, okay, all of a sudden you've got to be a monk, it's not reasonable. So if you're getting anxiety from not being able to see your friends, and you're anxious about work, or maybe you might lose your job, if you've got big things like that, I wouldn't worry too much about comfort eating.
Mm-hmm.
It's the least of your worries right now. But if most of your ducks are in order and you're comfort eating, then that's one thing you might have some space to work on, you know? So I don't think everyone should have to force themselves to suddenly become, you know, like monks. We all have our flaws and we all have needs, and we're social beings that are being forced not to socialize. So it's going to be quite hard for some people. And so again, it's a balance between being gentle on yourself, but also doing for yourself what is best for you.
I love that. That makes it sound, it's all temporary. We can go easy on ourselves, unless it's a really big issue, and just enjoy it while we can as well. It's not such a huge deal. The last thing I want to move on to is just, so a lot of people who's working from home, they're going to be sitting in not ideal situations. I mean, people sit down at desks, which is bad for their backs anyway. Some people are sitting in bed and working, and my sister was doing that. I'm just like, that's not good for you. And she's not the only one. So when your back is hurting, mine is kind of aching anyway, my upper back, what can I do to kind of ease off some of that stress? Even so, I do yoga and stuff like that anyway, but it still hurts. So what can people do?
Really?
Yeah.
It still hurts?
It still hurts, yeah.
But that might be because of the postures you're using when you're working.
Yeah, probably, in the way I stand and all sorts, I think. What can I do to ease some of that tension? And then what can other people also do?
That pain can manifest in many different ways with many different people.
Mm-hmm.
The key here is, and this sounds quite outlandish, but it's not anymore because of the new sports science and the research that's going out. No posture is bad posture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? There are only postures you stay in for too long. And because if your body gets used to one way of being and you don't express the opposite or other directions in those joints or in those muscles or in those fascial lines, you're going to find it hard to come out of them. And when you create that imbalance in the body, you will have dysfunction or uncomfortableness. So the key is, if you've been slouched over all day, you do have to do back bends and bend your back and pull your shoulder blades back.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you've been arching your back all day, lifting stuff or using your legs, you do have to stretch your hips. You have to create a good balance where your muscles and connective tissues stay in what we call the elastic phase, which is where they can lengthen and shorten at will. Now, if you stay in one position for too long and your muscles are just long all the time, they will become lax. And if you stay in a position where the muscles or connective tissue is short, they won't move out of that. They'll stay tight. So they go into this stage called plastic phase, where it doesn't move. When it goes into plastic phase, it starts to form bridges with other structures in your body, so it becomes stuck. And then you're going to get pain, because that's not how the body is meant to be. We're not Tin Can Man from Wizard of Oz. We don't oil ourselves all the time just to move. The movement itself is the lubrication. If you're feeling pain, it's because you're not moving enough. 30 minutes of yoga once a day, or an hour, or even an hour in the morning, hour in the evening, that's not enough if you sit in one position for 6 hours.
So it's just keeping mobile throughout the day then, so just not being static in a position.
If you've sat for an hour doing work or doing something or watching a movie and you start to feel uncomfortable, just pause and get up and move around and then sit back down.
Perfect.
Like,
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it then.
That's
So
it.
if you're in pain, just an hour in one position, move a bit, then you can go back to it, but just keep
Yeah.
mobile and just don't be
Yeah.
static for too long. Cool.
Other than that, if it's a chronic issue that's showing up more now, that's different. You need to see a specialist or a PT or something, you know. But if it's something that's happening just because of being immobile a lot in the house, you just need to move.
And then finally, we get on to your curveball question. So, what's the biggest curveball or obstacle you've experienced in your life, and how has that shaped the man you are today?
I mean, I've had so many curveballs, I couldn't even tell you what's the biggest, but there's a lot of opportunities I've had which didn't come through at the last minute. And some of these things could have really, really helped me to blow up in terms of what I'm doing. So, for instance, I could have been Conor McGregor's trainer, but I missed because
Wow.
I knew some people connected to him, but I missed out on that opportunity. I was going to be in a trailer, or I was going to have my own trailer dedicated to me for the Star Wars Rogue One movie. And Lucasfilm had pulled down the set in Hollywood. So the people that were going to get me to go and do it on the set said, we can't do it because the set's been pulled down. But otherwise I was going to go and do that. So if I had my own trailer for Star Wars, like who knows where I'd be now. But these things come and go. And I think one of the biggest turning points for me, or curveball, was I used to work in marketing in an office for a while. And at some point, I was waking up every day with a bad feeling in my gut, thinking, I don't want to go to work. I don't like this, what I do. And is this what I'm going to be doing for the next 50 years, like this? And this is how I'm going to feel? Is this what life is? Then I decided to be brave and start to focus on building something that I could do that gave me more self-satisfaction, and where I was actually helping people, helping humanity, helping them with pain, helping them feel stronger, more confident. Once I started doing that and I gave myself to it fully and I surrendered to what I feel is my purpose, the universe started giving me everything I needed. And you still have to work hard, and nothing gets given to you on a plate, but opportunities are always there for those who have their eyes open and are willing to take them. It's just, if you're stuck in a fear-based model, you're going to stick with what you're doing because you can't see a way out. But there's always a way out, and there's always a choice. When I decided to do this as a living, and I decided that helping people was what I wanted to do for my career, things started happening for me. So
when you started to let go and listen and follow
yeah,
that path, then it's all
that's
about
it.
going back to the center. Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's a lovely point to end on. Thank you so much for your time. And where can
Thanks for
people
having me.
find out more about you? Because your Instagram is wicked on the amazing things that you do.
Thank you.
You are
Thanks.
official, right?
Bodyweightgurus.com, but that's for my movement school. So if anybody wants to look at workshops, especially if you're a coach or an athlete, that's mostly who I work with personally. Look on there, we've got certifications for how to actually teach rehabilitation, mobility, calisthenics, things like that. And I have a team of people across the UK that work with me as well as master trainers. So if you want to learn about how we train and what we do, that's a good place to look. You can definitely contact me directly on Instagram if you ever want to ask me something, and I respond to everything. Like, if you look at the amount of posts I put up, it's not that many. It's one every few days. And I do that just to keep it alive. Otherwise, people will just not bother following it. Essentially, if you're in fitness, you have to have it for like a CV to show people what you're currently doing. But don't really care about fame. I just want to be able to inspire and help influence people to lead better, healthier, more wholesome lives.